Hey there, it's me, Adam from Teku Studios, game director of Neverland, and I'm here to at least talk a little bit about the Neverland 1 year anniversary that happened a little while ago. I apologize that I am a little late to this party, about I think a couple weeks late to this anniversary. I had plans for something bigger for the whole 1 year anniversary, but it just didn't happen. There were like production issues along with personal life stuff for me that I won't get into, but I just wanted to at least do this. I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it does mean a lot to me personally. Because Neverland, if you weren't around for the early access release of the game, that was back in September of 2021. And if we want to go back to even when the game started development, that was like February or March of that year, I think. I'm not entirely sure because development started very slowly and very, I guess unprofessionally would be the word. I just started sketching stuff. I started writing random concepts, and eventually I actually started working on a video game, and that's what ended up coming out. But in September of 2021, Chapter 1 released, and every 2 months since then, there was a new chapter that would come out. November was Chapter 2, January was Chapter 3, and finally, March of 2022 was Chapter 4, which is crazy to think about because that was over half a year ago already that Chapter 4 came out and the story finally finished. But for this 1 year anniversary, I'm really considering the early access, the Chapter 1 launch, to be the official starting point. I think that's just where it started for me personally. That's where most people got their first taste of Neverland. So I'm gonna count the anniversary at the beginning of the story, not at the end of the story, if that makes sense. But I did want to talk a little bit about Neverland, because I think I've told this story before to a few people, and I know this is going to sound really cliche, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was in a really different place to where I am now when I started Neverland. I started Neverland before Zodiac came out. This was when Zodiac was basically done. I had more or less finished it, and it was just on the release schedule for Steam and all that. I still have a poster of it back there, even though it was very much so a failed project. I don't want to call it a failure because I learned a lot from it, but it really wasn't received very well critically or like numbers wise. So that came out in May. That came out in May of 2021. And I remember that releasing, and I was like super proud of it at the time. It was this huge accomplishment for me personally because that was the first game I had ever released under the studio name, under Teku Studios as a company and as like a name. And it was not a great start. As I said, it really was not received well critically. It's not a good game. It really isn't. If you haven't played it, and I wouldn't blame you if you haven't, it's like this turn-based online battle type game. It didn't have much content whatsoever. It was online only, and it had a lot of technical issues. The art wasn't very good. The actual mechanics weren't very inspired. At best, it was just kind of generic, and at worst, it was a buggy mess. So I was super demoralized a little bit after that came out. And I was actually considering quitting game development entirely at that point. I had been making games at that point it was 6 or 7 years, but mostly as a hobby project. Teku Studios was the company I started just to, make and produce and make this my job sort of thing, which I always wanted to do. So to see the first game released on the company bomb in such a spectacular fashion, that was not great. But I did have Neverland in the pipeline at that point. I shouldn't say in the pipeline because that's not entirely correct. I started development And as I say that, I mean like I was drawing characters occasionally in like notebooks and stuff. I was writing like concepts for stories, things like that. I hadn't really started officially. It was all pre-production, and I didn't want to start officially until Zodiac came out. But once Zodiac came out and it bombed hard, I was like, do I really want to continue this? It was less of a do I enjoy doing this and more of a am I good at this, right? So I was eventually convinced by a friend of mine to keep at least release chapter 1, because, and this is another aspect of why Neverland is so important to me. The type of game it was a game I always wanted to make. I've talked about this before, but my main inspiration for wanting to be a game developer and sit in an office all day and write computer code or whatever else. My main inspiration for doing that was playing Undertale back in 2013. Jesus, was it 2013? 2014? I don't remember. It was 2014, somewhere around like early to mid 2010s. I am ashamed for blanking on that, but whatever. I played that, and I really wanted to make a story game. I really did. And I still do, and I still am. You can see this poster behind me, that's Eddie, Sugar Creek. That's also a story game. But it's a different story game. Neverland was the first big attempt at like, I'm just gonna go all in on this story. And it was a story I kind of always wanted to tell. Not specifically with like the same characters, but just like the message of the story, if that makes sense. To me, at least, the message in Neverland is like personal growth, right? It's accepting what's flawed about you and making steps to change that. Not necessarily fixing it, because there's no such thing as a perfect person, and you're not going to fix everything because you'll never be able to fix everything. But just the idea that we should celebrate both recognizing like flaws in yourself and accepting them and taking steps to like either, I don't know how else to put it, like rectify them or improve them. It depends on the flaw specifically, I suppose. But it's like, to me, that's very important, and I went through a similar process myself. So I wanted to put that story on the screen a little bit and turn it into a video game. And I ended up turning it into a children's video game, more or less. I mean, adults have played it, but it's very much a children's type of game. It's made for kids. And I'll just skip to the part where I released chapter 1, because that's the kicker. I was so unbelievably nervous for that. Like, you probably have no one watching this has any idea how nervous I was for that, because to me, even though no one knew what the story was, and chapter 1 ended on a cliffhanger, and you didn't really get to figure out a ton when it came to like the message and the motivation behind everything. It was still really important to me personally, and watching the response to it was really magical, if I'm being honest. That's a fun word, magical. It's just I saw people like playing it. And I didn't really see that with Zodiac as much. I know people played it because, you know, I saw the numbers, I saw the median time played, you know, the amount of people who have downloaded the game, all that jazz, all the Steam stats or whatever else. But those just felt like numbers, and the reviews I did get were negative for Zodiac, which is honestly understandable. It was not a great game. But Neverland was more positive. It was not perfectly positive, nor did I expect it to be. But watching people like be excited for it, they were playing it, they were talking about it, you know, and I would occasionally get pieces of like fan art and animations and stuff. That was really incredible because that's the first time anything like that's happened for a game I directed, you know? And it really changed my life trajectory, at least at that point. That was definitely a turning point for me personally. Had Neverland not caught on, had it been like a wet fart of a release or not received very well, or even not received at all, really, that would have been probably pretty devastating, I would imagine. But I am very, very thankful that that wasn't the case, because that game meant the world to me, and it still does. And then, you know, after that, the new chapters started rolling it, and it was like people were looking forward to these next chapters in the story. They were invested in what was happening. And when I say they, I'm also talking like probably some people who are watching this video right now know who I'm talking about, because you might have been there and you might have been one of those people. But that was incredible to live that myself from my position. I was like, it was the first time I really felt as if like this whole game development thing is moving beyond myself. This isn't just something I'm doing in my bedroom in my spare time while I work, like full time at some restaurant or something like I actually did before. It was like this is starting to move forward. I'm starting to get somewhere with this, and that was so genuinely exciting. And to think that like not only did it make an impact on my life, like your, and I say your, like generally, your reaction to Neverland made a very positive impact on my life. In the same way, I'm very glad and lucky to have made a positive impact on other people's lives, you know? Like it's strange to me, in a good way, in the best way possible, honestly, that like there's probably some like 12-year-old kid out there, right? There are people who are younger than I who might grow up and they might remember the little game with the yellow bunny rabbit. If that makes any sense at all. It's like I made a kids game, right? I made a kids game, and that was on purpose, and you know, kids played it, and to see that reaction come in, and to think that there's this little niche community around Neverland. It's not a big one, but there's some people in there, and there's some people who do know the characters and they do know the story. And to think that there are people out there who will remember this like years from now. Maybe. I don't want to speak too highly of my work or anything. But, you know, that Zodiac, that did not happen with Zodiac, and it will not happen with Zodiac. But, you know, with Neverland, it was like, you know, I made an impact on people with things that I was doing. And that was the first time I got to do that with video game development. And that was awesome. Furthermore, had like Neverland not only served as like that push forward for me personally, but it was also professionally served as a push, you know? I got to do the Kickstarter for Sugar Creek back here. I got to raise $6,000 from people who legitimately believed I had something worthwhile to create, and I don't think I would have been able to hit that goal had like Neverland not happened. Like, you know, even if I had attempted the Kickstarter, it would have been like I would have only have made Zodiac, and that's not a great track record. So to have a successful story-based game to have for this Kickstarter, it made all the difference in the world, not only in the monetary sense, but in the confidence sense as well. And I know this isn't a video about Sugar Creek, but I'm very excited for everyone to see it. It's coming along so well. I'm getting to work with a lot of very talented people for like the first time. Thanks to this Kickstarter money, I'm actually able to like pay people who are experts and professionals and they know what they're doing. And then getting to work with them is super awesome. And frankly, I would have had none of that had Never in Neverland not been a thing. So even though it's not much, what is this, like 15-minute video or something? I just wanted to make something quick to like at least touch on Never in Neverland, you know, a year after the fact, and talk about like it is really important to me. Even though it's like it's a short game, it's a kid's game, it's simple, it's whatever, but it does really mean the world to me personally. And you know, looking at those characters, you're like, there's not much better than that. And that's it, I guess. I don't know, I've said all that I needed to. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for playing. If you played Nen, thank you for your support. And I really hope you like Sugar Creek. I hope you will. It's exciting. So yeah, happy 1-year birthday to my... Is it conceited to call it my favorite game of all time? Because it's Undertale, really, but personally it's this one because I made it and had such an impact. Whatever. Happy 1-year anniversary to Never in Neverland. Send Amber a cake. She's not real. Goodbye, everyone.